WWE, and they left the door open for me, and I'd like to someday go back and do some stuff. Hopefully it'll be, this PG stuff will kind of blow over. I'll go back and do wrestling the way I like to do wrestling. I never really had a long-term program with Brock. I wouldn't mind working with Brock.
Would you prefer to fight Brock MMA, or would you want to fight him pro wrestling?
Oh, pro wrestling, of course. Yeah, more money, we get to pick our spots. I think the question earlier was, somebody asked me, would I take a fight with Brock? And the answer is, of course, yes, I would. I wouldn't turn down any big fights now. This is, it would be a dream come true for me. And I got nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose.
I think this is fake.
You can't say that.
I can say that.
Wrestling's not fake!
It's still real to me, damn it!
The unscripted, uncensored, loose cannon of commentary. This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
You're listening to Marks on Commentary.
All right, you are listening to Marks on Commentary. I'm Eddie Brophy.
I'm Jason Smith.
Now, I always have to start these shows off with a disclaimer, if you will. Jason has posted a light heavyweight title next to 2 Bud Light Limes.
Yes.
I am not the second recipient, as I do not drink light beer. Not even a beer drinker, but if I did, I prefer my beers not to taste like limey piss.
These are excellent, sir. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm one to talk. Because I'm taking a break from drinking after New Year's. I'm drinking a Mike's Hard Limeade, so you know what? I just shot my own argument in the ass. All right, well, I want to get right into things here because we've been kind of taking these would-be sabbaticals.
Yeah, but I think it was justified, and I think it kind of, it was a lull, and the week we skipped was Raw Christmas, so I think that was...
Here's the thing. There's a lot of backstage stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
At least if we're reading the dirt sheets. The first thing that I do want to point out was Monday Night Raw, the opening match with Punk and Seth Rollins. I am so glad that Punk actually addressed that as a garbage match because, for what it's worth, that was an awful fucking match.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it? Did you catch that? Because
back and forth, but, I could tell that it wasn't up to par, but I also know that Punk likes to fuck with fans, too, when he says shit like that. You know what I mean?
I personally, he could just be messing with it. I personally thought it was an awful match, especially for CM Punk. It was almost as if he was phoning it in, which is unusual for him because usually you get at least 3 to 4 star caliber matches out of him, and I was almost bored to tears. Like, it just really seemed like Punk did not give a fuck, which was interesting because he came out with that amazing promo, and then of course he, addressed members of the Shield, which I was. Again, I like when Punk's in a storyline or he's in a program with someone. I just feel like they don't know when to take him out of that program.
Yeah. At least the last year, it's been, when to focus on him,
Well, I had been given the impression when he opened it up by discussing how 2013 was not a banner year for Punk, so to speak, despite the lengthy title reign. I thought that was going to jump right into potentially challenging for the WWE World Heavyweight title.
Yeah.
And of course, then he turned it on the Shield, which was kind of a huge disappointment for me, which I can see as them trying to tie in that eventually the Shield are going to break up, and Roman Reigns, which at this point I'm not disagreeing with, but as of right now, it looks like Roman Reigns and not Dean Ambrose is going to be the breakout star.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Roman Reigns can't carry a promo yet, so that concerns me, is what you do when you eventually break him off of the group. But I don't know, he's over with the fans. I think, the more you make the fans wait for it, it's going to become bigger, and when he eventually does, he's going to be the face out of the group out of any of them. So I'm looking forward to it. They just need to pace themselves, because if their idea is he's going to walk into the Rumble and, walk out the winner, that's the wrong move.
Now, I'm just bringing this up because it does raise an interesting question. There's been a lot of talk that Punk, given what he tweeted about the match being garbage, that he's once again, kind of has no interest in re-signing with WWE. He's been playing up the whole retirement angle on Twitter when, he'll go to arena and say, I don't know how many more I have left in me here. Do you think that this could be Punk's last year with the company?
I don't. I think his stock is so high right now that, he's going to be a featured match on WrestleMania, and if he's not, then that's grounds to go, but I don't see him not being able to be a featured match to sell that show.
Well, let's even consider featured matches. Now, it's been rumored that Lesnar and Taker are going to have a match, although there's questions regarding Lesnar style versus Taker style. And the fact that Taker has to be a little more methodical and has to have a little more prep going into this event, considering his age and the condition his body's in. And that Lesnar is not the type of guy that they believe would kind of go along with that. He's not the type of guy that would want to prep that long for a match. Jay just showed me a clip of the returning of Batista saying that he would love a match with Lesnar, which kind of piques my interest just a little bit. We'll get into that in a minute. And now there's talk that Taker wants to go with Bryan for the main event, which would make sense if you were going to have a younger superstar break the streak.
And then you always have the rumored Cena Undertaker match, so it's weird. Taker's kind of the prettiest girl at the dance, and who's gonna get the who's gonna get the first kiss?
Who's also gonna dictate who the first kiss goes to? Because of course Vince is playing the domineering father in all of this. Vince is the one picking out who's gonna court Taker to the dance, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's really up to Vince. Now, if Taker says, I want Bryan, does the company have to go with a guy like Taker and say, you got it? Or are they going to try and sway Taker into a match with an opponent who may be more of Taker's pace, i.e. someone like Sheamus?
I don't want to see that. I have no interest.
That
to me, that would be a waste.
Now, and there's a few other matches so far. What I've read is the rumor that Batista will win the Rumble and go after Orton. Then there was talk of Bray Wyatt and Cena going at it, and then of course now they're retracting that. And then there was talk of Cena potentially getting in a tag team match with Hogan against the Cesaro Swagger tag team.
And then you can't forget the fact that Rock is now denied he won't be at WrestleMania this year, so that plays into it a lot.
So, there's a lot of potential directions, and of course, you could always wind up with a repeat of the Rumble main event, which will be Cena and Orton, which at this point... I doubt that. I don't know how that would come together, considering that if Cena, as far as I'm concerned, if Cena's in the main event match and not in the Rumble, unless the Rumble is the main event, regardless, if Cena's not in the Rumble, there's no way for him to headline WrestleMania unless, of course, they throw a swerve at you during the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view.
And then you also have the weird thing about Monday night is where Brock came out and challenged the champion after the Rumble match. So where does that play? Is that a match for Elimination Chamber? Is that just a throwaway match on Raw? Or are they somehow going to push him into the main event of WrestleMania?
Well, that's even confusing too. Now, theoretically, if they've given up on Lesnar Taker and Batista gets his wish and he gets Brock, Batista wins the Rumble, Brock wins the title of the Elimination Chamber, then you have those two square off for the main event. But then what do you do with guys like Orton or Cena? Or unless you put Cena with Hogan and Orton with the other idea that's been tossed around is Roddy Piper. But to me, if you're going to do a match like that, I would almost rather see Punk with Piper and Hogan with Cena.
Yeah, that feels awkward, though.
I'm just saying.
What I mean? No, I get what you're saying, but it's like, why go there? I don't know. It's like taking, your all-star player and, hey, we're going to send you down to minor league. Almost, you know what I mean? It's like you're underbooking your guy.
It's just one of those things. I'm trying to think the way I believe WWE creative would be thinking, and right now it seems like WrestleMania 30 has the potential to be one of the greatest WrestleManias, and the climate of the company could dramatically shift, especially where Batista did say in that interview he was kind of hoping the whole PG era would blow over by the time he got back. However, with Steph and Triple H, positioned in a place where Vince could be much like Taker and much like Punk on his last legs, phasing himself out of his own company and giving it to his daughter, what does that say for the future of the company in terms of the image? More so, what kind of image do you think Steph and Triple H would want to create?
I think it's kind of what it is now. I think they're happy with where they are. They can kind of walk the line and, have, sluttier women on Total Divas, but then your main show is all family oriented. And I think they're happy with what their product is now. And there's really not anybody else to dictate it being any different.
I will say that for years, Triple H has been positioned in the company of having more influence with talent and what have you. So far, we've seen, granted, it's still in progress, but you've seen a entirely new tag team division forming, or a tag team division at all, when we didn't have one for so long. Now we've also seen the unification of the two titles into the one WWE World Heavyweight title, which is it too little too late, though, is my thing. I think I mentioned this in the last show, where we've been asking, it's almost like the look of the title. Like, it got to a point where they had been kind of playing with us for so long that I remember when Rock unveiled the title, that new title should have gotten a bigger pop, and it was almost like nobody cared anymore. Yeah. And I was even wondering, when they unified the two titles now, are they going to phase out the WCW title? People haven't referred to it as that for a while now, but still, that classic WCW World Heavyweight title, and keep the new WWE one, or are they going to make another belt entirely now?
That's what's confusing me, is like, the point to do it would have been the next night. You know what I mean?
Right.
But he's still walking around with it. Are they planning on separating the two titles somehow? I'm sure there's a plan of why it's still here, but I'm confused as what that plan would be.
My guess personally would be, if they're going to introduce a new title, probably do it at WrestleMania, or if not, of course, we always say it's the Raw after WrestleMania, which is what we had been suspecting for a while with the last title. But now, there's a few questions here, and Twitter was, and I know Jason's probably going to yell at me for jumping the gun here.
No, by all means.
There's a few good ones here. AJ Marshall, who do you think will win at Royal Rumble for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, Cena or Orton? I think going forward, it's going to be Orton.
Yeah, I think it's too late if you were going to have the build up on Cena to switch it now. I think you've played this game since SummerSlam of pretty much Orton being the champion. Yeah, he's not had the belt, but nobody else has really had the belt except for Bryan for a day. Orton has been the champion in my book since SummerSlam, basically. So to put it on somebody else now, and you want to go into WrestleMania with a heel as your champion so your face can win it. I don't see it changing multiple times, if one time, before that event happens.
Now, there's a couple of people been asked, typical wrestling fan, and then James Williams, regarding Daniel Bryan joining the Wyatt family. Is it good for the storyline, or is it hurting Daniel Bryan?
I think it's going to be a swerve at some point, because in turn, on the family again, somehow to get closer to Bryan, to Bray, and I don't know. I hope it plays into him winning the Rumble, but I'm not confident in that. It's all of it's really a crapshoot, because it's like everything plays off of everything else, and you're like, I don't have a clue how this plays out, and I'm not confident in how it's going to play out.
This is such a offshoot, or a far cry, if you will. If his first pick going into Mania is he wants Bryan in a match, is there any way they could kind of tie in Kane's rivalry with the Wyatt family with his relationship with Bryan, and could the Wyatt family have something in for Taker?
There's ways to do it. I don't know.
It's a bit convoluted, but I feel like if Taker got what he wanted, he got Bryan, there has to be a story behind it. It can't just be like Taker shows up, points at Bryan, and says, I want you at WrestleMania. That's kind of been done before. Yeah. We've had the anticlimactic, Taker returns, and, the big, who's he going to pick to wrestle? and either Triple H comes out or Shawn Michaels has a vendetta, or he wins the Rumble and he picks who he wants. I feel like there has to be a bit more substance to that story if he's going to come back, especially considering how many more WrestleManias does Taker have left.
I don't know.
I mean,
it depends who he works with from year to year.
I mean, I think for me at this point, past WrestleMania 30, it's sad. It's no longer exciting. It's no longer worth the anticipation. It's just kind of getting sadder every year. Because he can't, I mean, the dream match a few years ago would have been Lesnar and Taker. And again, they missed the ball with that one. Mm-hmm. Be it because of Brock's obligations to MMA or just certain things couldn't work out. Taker's not in the shape he was in when him and Brock had their program a while back. God, that was almost 10 years, wasn't that?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2002. Yeah, so that was like 10 years ago.
Over 10 years. Yeah.
So I mean, that's the next question too. Is Batista's return? What does that do for you?
To me, it came on very suddenly. Of the people to return, it was like I wasn't expecting it, but in my mind, he's almost there to fill the role of The Rock. I think they needed another face, an established face, because whatever plans they had hopefully are already in place, and they needed somebody for Brock. And when Brock went down, they looked to what else they could do, and I think Batista fills that role. And that's why I'm kind of looking at the Brock Batista thing. And if you go to WWE.com already, they had Heyman do an interview with Michael Cole, much like the Triple H interviews, and they specifically mentioned Brock. So I think there's already underlining work to get those two together. Everybody seems to be set on, Brock and Undertaker being the match, and I don't see that happening right now.
Here's my thing. If theoretically Batista wins the Rumble or Brock gets the title, what's the use in having two part-timers headline a WrestleMania, or at least have the second to last WrestleMania match? There's that question, and then there's, if Batista and Brock do have a match, are you like me kind of getting flashes of Brock versus Goldberg from WrestleMania 20? As these two bigger guys that they're very limited in the ring because they're bigger guys. They're not going to get the kind of things you can see and say like a Punk Ryan.
Yeah.
At first, Batista just seems such a strange name to pull out in order to like build momentum going into the pay-per-view. I mean, personally, I've never been the world's biggest Batista fan to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, it's the name that kind of piques my curiosity, but that's really all it does.
He's been gone long enough for me to miss him. You know what I mean? Certain guys, they go away, and it's like, okay, I'm done with you right now. Like Big Show. Big Show could go away for 3 years and then come back, and it's like, oh, you've been gone for a while. I've had time to miss you. Welcome back. Yeah, I want to see what you can do to the current landscape. A lot has changed since Batista left in, 2009?
Right.
Different guys are on top now, and I'm curious to see how he fits into that.
Now, regarding old school Raw,
coming
up, the first Raw of the new year, I'm kind of over the whole throwback to the retrospect of wrestling. It's always fun to see. I think the whole thing with old school Raw that kind of bugs me is the time to get excited to see familiar faces from the 80s or the 90s or whatever. It has always been the Rumble.
Yeah.
Now, obviously there's got to be a big surprise entrant to the Rumble. If it's not going to be Batista and it's not going to be like someone from the Attitude Era or, someone from the 80s, who's your guess as to who the... Because, aside from who wins the Rumble, I think the other big question is who's going to surprise us at the Rumble.
Mm-hmm. Everybody said Sheamus, and I think that's an easy cop-out to just put somebody out there, and I'm sure he'll be there. I'm trying to think of who else would not shock you, because I don't need to be shocked where it's Bill Goldberg, but I don't know.
Then you had the year where they tried too hard to shock you, where it was like Road Dogg came out, Karma came back. You had Cole, Lawler, and Booker T all in the match. That was one of the worst Rumbles I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, next to the Drew Carey Rumble. I mean, again, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. I think the only name that could really the only two names that could jump out at me going along with the potential Hall of Fame nominations at this point, I mean, I've always said Ultimate Warrior, just kind of like a, hey, I'm Ultimate Warrior, remember me? Mm-hmm. I feel like the other big one would be China.
I think she's burned her bridges. I don't see her coming back anytime soon.
I mean, it depends, because if the Generation X goes in as a faction, as from, you know, the Michaels, Triple H DX to the Pac Outlaws, China DX, I think it would require every member there. And I seem to remember reading that Triple H did have interest in getting China in on that.
When was it, though? Was it before she did her porn career, or?
Oh, this is after. This is probably like back in summertime.
I don't know. I just think there's too much, you know, damaged goods there for them to capitalize on.
I don't know, because, I mean, you could have said the same about Warrior. That relationship was obliterated when that DVD came out. I mean...
Yes, but it also wasn't based off of, you know, it was backstage politics that kind of did it. And China's, it's more of a reputation of the drunk, the drug addict, the, you know, porn star that kind of, you know, WWE corporate kind of shatters the image of.
Well, I mean, we could go into backstage misogyny or backstage sexism, but X-Pac arguably has an even worse reputation than China, and he's made plenty of on-camera appearances.
True.
So, I mean...
But at the end of the day, he's Triple H's friend, and I'm sure China doesn't necessarily have that distinction.
I don't know. It's just funny to me because the fact that they even involved her, not personally, not for an interview, but the fact that they even mentioned her in the Triple H DVD seemed like a huge kind of nod, at least to her career.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have very well have even blown past that entire history. I mean, we know what they've done with Benoit. I mean, you saw the package, I'm sure, with Randy Orton on Monday. And, you know, who did Randy Orton win his first World Heavyweight title against? Benoit. Yeah. Did you even catch, like, a glimpse of Benoit's tights? No, because Benoit's been erased.
No, they did, what was it, the TLC build-up. They showed Cena beating JBL for the title, and then they showed Randy Orton beating Rob Van Dam for the Intercontinental title, which was weird.
The whole thing seems strange to me, but I mean, I think the two names you can completely rule out in terms of the Rumble, in terms of Mania, are going to be Jericho and Brock.
Yeah, Jericho, you never know. Jericho likes to hide stuff. I wouldn't be shocked as much to see Jericho as I would, you know, a Sting, a Goldberg, a Hogan. You know what I mean?
Now, I don't know Sting's, what his place in TNA is right now, so I don't even want to throw out that name because, of course, I don't want to be met with all the anger of internet wrestling fans. And I say, oh, yeah, Sting could be a potential, and then come to find out he just signed another deal with TNA. Then again, judging from the picture I've seen on our Twitter account of their show in Lowell, say joke to you, I don't think they're far from high school gymnasiums next.
No, it's sad. It's disappointing too, because you need that number 2 in this country.
I don't think you'll ever have it again, though. I just think because WWE's, it's a monopoly, and it ate up all the other territories, and it put out one of their more fierce competitors out of business. I think in 2001, we actually had somebody on Twitter point out that, see if I can find the tweet now, that, you know, Vince had said, you know, WCW wasn't even a company until 2001, which obviously, yeah, when he bought it. And it was a company for all of 5 seconds before they merged. So, yeah. I mean, I think people are still holding out for that number 2. I don't think it'll ever happen. I think in terms of the longevity of professional wrestling, I think it's going to be all WWE or nothing. I'm pretty sure I just added a third W to WWE. But I mean, looking forward here, it seems promising on paper.
What does?
I'm just where they could potentially go in terms of matches, in terms of the overall event of WrestleMania. I mean, even in terms of the Hall of Fame, I know 2 names that I've been saying for over a year now are Warrior and Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm even surprised that WWE didn't try to get their hands in that little kind of controversy over, Andy Kaufman's, daughter going to an event, a comedy club, and saying that her father was actually alive, which later that's kind of the fun aspect of Andy Kaufman's life, is that, people are still trying to play into that conspiracy that he faked his death.
That maybe he could. I'm sure that if he was inducted, I'm sure there's a way to do something like that.
Well, I mean, the best you could do is you could have Andy Kaufman be inducted by Jerry Lawler and have Tony Clifton come out and accept the award.
And something involving the daughter. There's numerous things they could play it up so much.
Well, I mean, then let's discuss the WWE Hall of Fame nominees. I mean, obviously, big, obvious name, Warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, being your headline nominee, I mean, other names, Celebrity Wing, I say Kaufman. I mentioned his Generation X. Are there any big sort of marquee names that you throw in the Hall of Fame this year?
I mean, everybody always, and I agree, Macho Man, but the whole thing with the family is always up in the air, and hopefully that gets worked out at some point. I don't know if there's like a headline guy that I say him. Jake Roberts, I guess, would be one.
The other obvious candidate could be Owen Hart.
I love it. I want to see it, but I still think there's tension between the family.
Well, that's the thing, is I kind of feel like with Bret Hart still being very much involved in the company, I mean, is that enough to kind of mend fences? But, I mean, given the fact that Martha, pretty much owns that man's legacy, I don't know, because I don't know where she stands, if that's ever something you get over, or if that's something that it's a vendetta that will never die.
The only thing you can hope for is that his children eventually say, Mom, we need to do this for Dad,
Right. I mean, I think that's the thing, because I've always said what, in my mind, leads to a big, really exciting WrestleMania is always who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, because whoever goes in the Hall of Fame is inevitably going to make an appearance or some kind of, they're going to have a spot on the big show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, I think the only way that the Warrior induction makes sense is if he either makes a Rumble appearance or a WrestleMania appearance, which, again, is being rumored that in some capacity they're in talks with Hogan to get him to at least have, like, a small promo or something at the show.
I mean, I want to see something, but I don't want to see a match. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. Someone had said on WrestleZone, it was something to the effect of, Hogan and Piper do a thing where they talk about the old days or something, and then younger guys come out and, they're their big spots where they do their finishers, and kind of what Hogan did when he was inducted, where he came out and he took out Muhammad Hassan, who was picking on Eugene.
Yeah.
I mean, it got a great reaction from the crowd, but it didn't require, like, a full-scale match at all.
Maybe you put the participants of the first WrestleMania main event, Mr. T, Hogan, Piper, Paul Orndorff, put them all out there and, let the crowd absorb the moment that we're having 30 years ago. And then, I don't know, you have the Wyatt family or the Shield or something attack, even though I want to see them in a bigger capacity. But, you know what I mean? Just that moment of, oh, shit. And, you beat them up and throw them out the ring and, all four guys raise each other's hands.
All right. Now, I'm just kind of going through our tweets here. I think we covered most of these. Who do you think will face Brock Lesnar, Ryback, or Batista? I don't see much going forward with Ryback, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that ship's kind of sailed. I think the best thing to do is stick him in a tag team. That's what I say about anybody that's kind of, Del Rio, not much pace right now, kind of low on the card, stick him in a tag team.
Right.
Change the way you use the guy. So at some point you can bring him back under the singles card.
Now, I mean, I'm even reading some of these tweets regarding Lesnar and Mark Henry. Personally, I don't understand that at all. I really don't understand the program there, but I suppose it's to, kind of give Brock the edge, as if Henry puts him over, if he is actually able to, like, really have a good match with Henry, which I think is what they're building to for the Rumble, that it'll establish Brock once again as a fierce opponent and as someone to be, I don't know. I don't understand that booking there.
I just hope it's maybe to get Brock into the Rumble, where he's just pissing off everybody in the locker room, saying, I'm just going to dominate and do his thing. And then, he has that bump in with Batista.
That would be a good one. I wouldn't mind that at all.
And the other thing I mentioned that I was like, oh, wait, if Punk tosses Brock out of the Rumble, he kind of gets his win back for SummerSlam, and it doesn't really hurt Brock that much, and it elevates Punk back up.
I mean, there's even another aspect, too, where you have somewhere where either Punk's in the Rumble with Brock, and you have Batista come in and eliminate Brock, or do something where he pulls down the top rope and Punk, clotheslines him, and he lands on the mat, and Punk gets his second win back, and then you build towards rivalry with Batista and Brock.
Yeah. You end that feud and you move on to the next one.
I mean, that's definitely one of the, more cliche sort of, ways of building a rivalry after the Rumble. But I mean, because we've seen it plenty of times before.
But it's also, hey, here's the best of WWE. We put them in a mixing pot and let's see what clashes. I think my favorite Rumble of all time was like the 2004 one, because you had all these great competitors who had legitimate claims to being the top guy. You had Cena, who was up and coming. I think Batista, Orton was in there. Rob Van Dam. You had all these guys that it was like, oh shit, this is what's going to happen when all these top competitors. Each Rumble each year you have like the Hunico entrance where you're like, okay, 5 seconds until he's eliminated, but I want to see like headliners clash, and you get away with it because it's not a match. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can have all these elements play off of each other, and you're not really hurting anybody. You can help build towards an eventual match between two people.
I was gonna say, I feel like the only way a Rumble really works is if they give all the entrants enough time so the fans can kind of soak in, like, oh man, there's Batista, Lesnar, Punk, and all the main eventers, Bryan, in the ring at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, you get, one or two, like a Cena or an Orton are in the match, and then you get all these, jobbers, and they're eliminating jobber after jobber, and it always remains for a good 10 minutes a match, just two guys in the ring. I mean, I've frankly always enjoyed Rumbles where the ring fills up, where you at least have 10 or 15 guys in there at a time.
Yeah. I want to know, if somebody can figure this out, what is the most participants that have ever been in the Rumble at one time during the match? You know what I mean? Yeah, there's 30 guys in the Rumble match.
He's not asking how many entrants, because, of course, that was in Boston with the, one and only time they had 40 people. No,
yeah.
If anyone knows the answer to this, I mean, we could even Google it, because I'm sure it's going to pop up somewhere. But
has it been 20 guys? Has it been, I don't know. I'm just curious to know. Like that to me is a cool trivia fact. Like, oh, in '91 it was 17 guys at once.
Or where they do the little statistic that I'm sure they're going to recycle again, where it was, how many seconds someone's been in the ring, how much, over the years, every competitor in the ring, how
top
much
spots, number 28 is the most valuable number, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-and-so. I love how they always, like, skip over Chris Benoit winning at number 1, but they still mention it.
Oh, yeah. And again, that seems funny to me because, that in itself was a historical thing. He came in at number 1 and he hung in there and he won the whole damn match.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, that's going to be stripped from the record books because of obviously what happened. And again, is it justifiable because of, I mean, for most people, that's probably a no-brainer. Like, of course, it's justifiable to erase him from the annals of WWE history, but it's hard because when you have a superstar of that caliber who did have a rather impressive streak of, he was in the Rumble at number 1, he won the match, or the number of titles he won, or et cetera, so forth.
I've always thought that title run hurt them the most because it hurt them on three fronts. First, Benoit wins the Rumble in the number one spot. Then he goes on to WrestleMania 20 to main event and win the title. And then Orton beats him for his first title run. So it's those 3 points that it's like anybody else's title run, it hasn't been as important. But like that kind of hit on 3 very important, notable events in WWE history.
Well, yeah, because that was, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but that was the first number one entrant.
No, Shawn Michaels did it in 95.
He was that's true. But for someone to be the number one entrant, get through the entire match, win the title, and then drop it to the youngest superstar in history.
Mm-hmm. It just hurt them on so many fronts.
Well, again, it's just awkward. If you don't know, if you haven't been a fan over the past, let's say 10, 15 years, then of course it's, it doesn't matter who Orton won his first title against. When you're watching the video package and you watch the match, if you had seen that SummerSlam match, it's a little awkward when it's like you're seeing, the iconic shot of Orton with, holding up the title and kissing it, and it felt really forced to me, like
jumped ahead.
Right. I know Jericho has mentioned this several times in his second book, where there are all these great matches, not necessarily crediting Benoit entirely, but crediting whoever was also in the ring with Benoit. And they'll never be able to really at length discuss what made that match so special because of Benoit being their competitor.
It's unfortunate, but at the same point, if you highlighted that, that's the thing people would talk about most.
Well, especially where you're in the TV PG program era of, what kind of message is that sending to your younger audience?
Exactly. And I think their plan is just eventually let time pass and get as far away from that as you can.
Personally, I don't think that will be an impossibility at this point because, I don't think anyone will forget who Benoit was as a competitor or what Benoit did. But I think the longer, personally, I say Brian Pillman. We both know who he is. We both know, how he passed away, etc. But, you say that to anyone else, and it's like, who the hell's Brian Pillman? Yeah. And I think that's what they're going to get out of having a younger audience, is they're going to have less people that even knew who the hell Benoit was. So it's like it never has to be brought up again.
Yeah. Enough time passes where it's just not even socially relevant anymore.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing that works in WWE's favor in terms of bad publicity or what have you, is that, bad publicity doesn't necessarily stick around in that company forever. But I think that has to do with being one of the longest, episodic TV programs out there. Is it's constantly changing and evolving. So, again, you see the older members of the audience that freak out and like mark out for an older superstar. Meanwhile, their kids are like, "Dad, who the hell's that?" So, unless you're like a hardcore fan or a geek, most people aren't even going to pay attention to these things. Yeah. I'm just curious overall. Are you looking forward to the Rumble? For me, has always been a pay-per-view that, unlike all the other ones, including WrestleMania, that even if the card isn't very, let's say enticing enough to merit your $50 or $60, whatever they charge for the pay-per-view, you'll always look forward to the one match, which is the Rumble. Is that kind of your overall feeling with this pay-per-view, or?
Yeah, how can you not be excited for the Rumble? It's always one of the better, more entertaining things to watch in a year, It's the closest thing we have to a playoff.
Well, for example, for me, the Rumble that was in Boston when Del Rio won, that was one of the worst pay-per-views, because I remember that was when I was kind of going from being, again, a casual fan who, had been watching Raw every Monday night and was, becoming more, I say educated on, this is where the business is going, because the last time I was really invested as a fan was, WrestleMania 20. And then coming back into it, who the hell's Nexus, or the core, like, what's the story here? And then, Punk taking the reins from Wade Barrett. So, but as bad as I thought the two, title matches were, with the three, because they did have the women's championship defended there, I believe.
Yep.
The Rumble was what kept my interest.
Exactly.
And also because I was one of those asshole people that even if I didn't watch WWE programming, I was still reading the dirt sheets and had heard the rumor that, Kevin Buddy's going to come back as Diesel and then Booker T's going to come out. So it was one of those, I essentially ordered like a $60 pay-per-view because I just wanted to see Kevin Nash's Diesel again and just kind of see, because again, it was in Boston, it's in our home. You were actually there.
Yep.
Just to feel the energy that the crowd would give, or see how someone like Kevin Nash would feed off that if he came back in the old Diesel outfit with the old music, etc. and so forth. And I mean, as little as I knew about the product at the time of getting back into it, I was still really invested in Nexus and Punk leading Nexus, and essentially how they were, holding that Rumble match hostage, which I thought was really fun and entertaining. I mean, that's the other thing, is what kind of twists and turns would you want to see in a Rumble?
I'm hoping to see the Shield and the Wyatt family somehow involved.
I would like that. I mean, unless, I don't know, because if they clash at the Rumble, is that enough to hold fans over? Or would you expect something more? Like when we saw Goldust in the Rumble last year, and he was taking shots at Cody, everyone was thinking like, oh man, we might actually get our Cody versus Goldust match. If we see the Wyatts and the Shield go at it, are we still going to anticipate like a giant tag team match with them? Or will that kind of hold us over that, we kind of got it?
I don't know. I hope we get it. I mean, it's so close to WrestleMania where, in my mind, it's stupid if you don't somehow get Shield and Wyatt together.
Right.
So, and maybe that is the inevitable breakup of the Shield. But
I mean, could we see any members of the Shield jumping ship over to the Wyatt family?
Not right now.
Right.
I think it's, too close with the Bryan thing. That I hope ends up wrapping up soon. And they doing something more with Bryan.
Well, that's like Punk and the Shield. I would like to see the Bryan Wyatt family thing get wrapped up, at least by the Rumble.
Yeah.
Because once we get through the Rumble pay-per-view, you have Elimination Chamber, and then you're right into WrestleMania.
Yeah. An Elimination Chamber is a glorified Raw, basically. You know what I mean? It's the last chance to set anything else up.
I remember I felt that way when No Way Out was the in-between pay-per-view, because I always hated that you could have someone win the Rumble, or, you can have a champion, and, when I became a fan, it was just set. Like, the guy who wins the Rumble challenges the guy that holds the title. That was
that night. You know what I mean?
That was your lock for the main event. I really kind of hate that there's that unpredictability, and people say, well, isn't that what we love about wrestling, unpredictability? Yes and no. I mean, I don't like it when it comes to if you got a really great potential match between a Rumble winner and the title retainer, or the title winner, having it get completely fucked up at Elimination Chamber.
Yeah. Because there was that year where who won? Somehow, I think Edge lost the World Heavyweight title and walked out the WWE title. And then that fucked up all the plans for WrestleMania. Orton won the Rumble, and it was looking like it was going to be Cena and Orton at WrestleMania, and Triple H and Edge, and they fucked up the plans, and it got twisted around.
Well, speaking of Triple H, there was a rumor I did read where Punk was going to face Triple H at Mania.
I don't know.
I wouldn't understand that at all, because if you were going to build a rivalry with Triple H, and I'm assuming you're building it against the Authority, wouldn't you have done that first as opposed to going after the Shield, unless it was in a anti-Authority, in the vein of being anti-Authority, if you went after, like, basically their glorified,
What is your ideal WrestleMania card? Use all the major pieces and put it together. What are you looking for? And
I mean, personally, I would really like to see. I mean, hypothetically, if Punk is on his way out, I would like to see him main event this Mania.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even care if he wins the title. I would just like to see him main event it. I mean, it's a tough one because you got guys like Punk and Bryan who you want to see in the main event. But I mean, the best I could come up with for like a main event would you'd either have to have Taker in a big name main event. So if you had Taker and Bryan, well, if that's your main event, Bryan has to break the streak. If Taker faces Bryan at all, he has to break the streak. And I say that just because, I mean, just all the shit Bryan went through with that title. You know, the game of hot potato he was playing with the title. Mm-hmm. Win the title, get pedigreed, have Orton cash in, beat Orton legitimately, or, you know, Triple H made it illegitimately and have the title stripped from you. It just, I think in order to restore Orton, if he were to have the match with Taker, it would have to main event. He would have to break the streak. Because there's a lot of names. I mean, if Cena's not going to wrestle for the title, I mean, Cena personally would be my number one pick for Taker. Number two would be Bryan. If you're going to have Batista and Lesnar go at it, I can't see it being for the title. I can see it being like just a general like singles grudge match, but I can't see it being for the title. And I really, really hate the idea of Orton defending and even retaining the title at WrestleMania. I mean, just how sick of Orton I am. Unless there's bigger, I don't know, unless there's a culmination of different storylines or someone, or it's kind of like the demise of the Authority or him as the face of the WWE. Like, if Orton defends the title, he has to lose it.
Yeah.
And then he's got to build on a program with Triple H where he gets pissed at Triple H and Triple H turns on him something. Unless you find out later on that the whole reason why Triple H is welcoming Batista back into the company with open arms is because he never had faith in Orton to begin with. And then you have this whole like throwback to Evolution. I mean, that being said, we do know Ric Flair will be on Old School Raw. Mm-hmm. So, I mean,
there's a lot of weird elements where every time you think you have it figured out of one answer over here, there's 6 more question marks over there of what do you do with these guys?
I think that's the only thing that worries me, though, is that when a fan can kind of come to a definitive, like, oh, I like this idea conclusion, I think it's going in the opposite direction.
Yeah. The only way the WrestleMania card I see that works the best is you have Brock Batista, you have Cena Undertaker, you do Bryan and Triple H with possibly a guest referee of Shawn Michaels, maybe some kind of submission match.
I would almost go even better with that because you've already seen Michaels in a guest referee capacity. I want to almost bring in Vince and have him be the guest referee.
But they already built up the relationship with Bryan and HBK, where I almost want to see that played out somehow.
If I see it played out, and this is going to be terrible, I would want to see it played out in a match between HBK and Bryan.
True.
I mean, that's the thing. If they're going to continue with that storyline, I think those two, he needs to come out of retirement, you know, which goes against, you know, the whole career versus streak thing, but it would make sense in the capacity of what they were trying to establish with HBK and Bryan.
Yeah, I would love to see Shawn Michaels and Bryan, but I just have a feeling WWE is pretty locked on him not coming out of retirement. But
I'm sure he's pretty locked on it. I mean, you've seen the beard.
Yeah.
The man is clearly enjoying his time off.
And then for the title, you have Randy Orton and CM Punk. And I know you've already done Orton and Punk at WrestleMania, but now they've switched roles and heel and face, and it's for the title, and maybe you can add a match stipulation to change it up a bit. And
well, it's funny you say that, though, the heel and face thing, because then it brings up, you know, a comment that kind of blew up on the internet recording, you know, Vince's idea that there's no need for heels and faces anymore.
That's stupid.
And that's the only thing that kind of worries me about that is the fact that, well, what if we are in the era where Vince is still positioned in a very powerful place to have the final say on, you know, what goes on the card and what doesn't, and his whole ideology is, well, what good are heels and faces? We don't need them. So,
I don't know. It's a crapshoot right now, so I'm hopefully the Royal Rumble answers a lot of questions and where they're going, but as always, it changes from year to year, and what you think you get at Elimination Chamber isn't what you end up getting.
I mean, I'll leave it at right now. I mean, if if the quality of matches improved, like I said, opening Raw, I thought Punk came out with again an effortless promo until he turned his attention on the Shield, which again I thought he was coming out to discuss, you know, I'm going back after the title, and then it turned back on the Shield, and then he had that pretty abysmal match. So that I mean, I think in terms of normally I'm very adamant that the quality of the booking or the quality of the storylines need to improve. I think lately the quality of the matches need to improve. I mean, after all, it's wrestling. Like I feel like again the two main guys that I feel like are having really quality matches are Goldust and Cody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Orton is essentially Bizarro Cena. He's the Cena nobody can get behind, but he's still got his like 5 or 6 moves of doom. And I mean, again, that's why I find Orton's style of wrestling so stagnant and so boring. Is just because he's just not versatile in the ring. He doesn't have, he just doesn't have the kind of agility, or he just doesn't have the technique that someone like Bryan or Punk has. Mm-hmm. And to see Punk underutilized, or to see Punk kind of growing apathetic or complacent with his apathy is disappointing. But I mean, in the meantime, I guess Royal Rumble predictions at MO Commentary, 978-276-9418. Now, we do have calls.
Hello. My name is Odad Padad, and I am calling to endorse Andy Kaufman for the World Wildlife Federation's Hall of Fame. I think that Andy Kaufman was, really just phenomenal for the world of wrestling because, to have held the intergender title for as long as he did, through as many fights as he did, is something that really, I think the Wild West Emporium ought to celebrate with this Hall of Fame nomination. It's not easy for a woman to have won that many fights against these big, giant men. To hold the intergender championship for that amount of time is just... we really ought to be recognizing that within the wildlife world wrestling education. This thing, I think it's just amazing. So anyway, I'm in favor of Andy Kaufman for the Hall of Fame. Thank you.
So we just heard that call. The Andy Kaufman for the Hall of Fame call.
I personally love that call. We got that like 2 weeks ago. As you can tell, I've been in a strange place, so I haven't been manning the phone lines as well as I should have been. But that's pretty much what brought up the Andy Kaufman the Hall of Fame. People have been talking about it for years. I just pulled the trigger on it already.
If you have a celebrity wing in the WWE Hall of Fame, Andy Kaufman is the Bruno Sammartino of celebrities in the Hall of Fame.
For God's sake, you have Pete Rose in there. You have Pete Rose, you have Pete Rose and Drew Carey. Enough said. At least Andy Kaufman did something for the business. Mm-hmm. And Andy Kaufman generated some buzz for the business because he genuinely loved the business. And watch any interview with the King Jerry Lawler long after Man on the Moon came out, and he'll sit there and he'll tell stories of great admiration for hours about Andy Kaufman. Why he's not in there? I think the fear of the WWE is that if Andy Kaufman goes in there, there's no more celebrity wing, because he's the most credible celebrity, if you will, that could go into the Hall of Fame. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever were a huge fan of the MTV Movie Awards, but before they gave out the Generation Award, they used to give out the Lifetime Achievement Award. And it was a joke. Like, one year, Jason, not Kane Hodder or the other guys that play Jason, just Jason won the award. And John Lovitz came out as Jason, and he had his wife in the crowd wearing the hockey mask. He went up with the hockey mask as Jason. Godzilla won the award. But then, you had Jackie Chan won the award. And this is before Rumble in the Bronx, and nobody knew who he was. And then you had Ron Howard's brother, who I'm sure, I mean, everyone knows from seeing any Ron Howard movie who his brother is. And they had pretty much done away with the award because he just seemed so genuinely humbled by getting the award that it kind of took the joke out of it. That I almost feel like the WWE Hall of Fame's the same way with their celebrity wing. It's almost kind of a joke. So if you give it to someone like Kaufman, they can't do it anymore. Because I'm sorry to say, but I could honestly see Kevin Federline getting in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, God, I hope not. But Mike Tyson made sense to me.
Well, that's what I mean. Mike Tyson made sense. If you have someone like Mike Tyson and then you put in someone like, Andy Kaufman, you have two legitimate celebrity Hall of Famers in there.
Donald Trump from last year sucked.
Now, did Cyndi Lauper get in there?
No, which would be another great poll.
I don't even know why I thought she was. It was probably because she did that bit with
Piper on Raw a couple of years ago. I think it was like an old school Raw, a week leading up to it, or something like that. I don't know.
That was my other question. Of course, I'm gonna get hell from hardcore fans. Like Mr. T, is he in there?
Nope. I think he's turned it down though, but hope they can. If they really push, they got Bruno Sammartino back in there, so.
I was gonna say because Mr. T's got all those legitimate offers doing the Warcraft commercials, so.
But that makes sense to me, Those are names that make sense of celebrities in a WWE Hall of Fame because, they brought it to a different level at that time where it was needed. I don't know. Is Muhammad Ali in there?
I don't think he is.
I think that would be another great one to put in there.
Liberace.
No, but I mean, in terms of like legitimate tough people, like that to me makes sense. Like an honorary, hey, we like your style.
I was gonna say Pete Rose, Drew Carey,
Donald Trump.
Don't really make. I mean, Donald Trump I can see because of Vince's relationship with Trump, but it's just such a stupid. Like we get it; they're both billionaires and they're friends.
Yeah, and there's the NBC. Is it NBC or CBS? Whatever network WWE's tied to.
Yeah, NBC.
NBC.
To the troops and that's the other thing. Are we ever going to see Saturday Night Main Event make a comeback?
I doubt it. We get the one WrestleMania for NBC a year, and that's about it.
I mean, that's the one show I remember when it did make a comeback. That was the one time I was genuinely super excited.
It felt different. They did a lot of different things, and it felt big, and it was like, wow, I've never seen this. It's not quite a pay-per-view, but it's not quite Raw.
Well, that's the thing that I miss. Like, even back in the day when, you had either Wimbledon or you had the dog show, the Best in Show things going on, and you would get, like, a Saturday Night Raw. It would definitely be interesting if they tried to do, like, a throwback and do, like, another Saturday Night Main Event or something.
I don't know. It must not have done well, or well enough for them to keep doing it.
Well, again, too, I think at the time, I believe it was 2006 when they brought it back.
Yep.
I mean, Cena wasn't. I mean, no, because he had won the title in 2000.
He wasn't that guy yet, though.
No, he wasn't quite the spokesperson.
He was still.
Pebbles. So,
elements of thugonomics were still there.
I feel like if you tried it again now with Cena and Punk, you would definitely. I mean, I think you would pull in bigger rates because I mean, tribute for the troops. I mean, granted, I feel like they would still do that regardless of good or like poor ratings. But I feel like tribute to the troops, the reason why that still has longevity in it is because they have to do pretty good with that.
Yeah.
All right, before we wrap the show, we do have one more call.
Hey, this is Julian, Twitter handler at JulianXcalibur. Long-time listener. First question: who do you think will surprise? Well, who do you think will be the surprise guest at the Royal Rumble? Because I think it will be the WWE app.
So there you are for our listeners' prediction on the surprise entrant, the WWE app. All right, I figured it out, Jay. I know who I want my surprise entrance to be.
Who's that?
the anonymous Raw general manager. I literally just want someone to bring out the podium with the laptop and the microphones.
Just on a go-kart.
Just steal Paul Heyman's rascal. And it would be even more effective if they were able to, like, power it with a remote control. So, like, the lights go out Jericho style, and it's like you have Dolph Ziggler in the ring, because this is how we feel about Ziggler's entry number 1 again. Oh, man, my career is over. And now it's really over, because entry number 2, Raw's general manager, just rolling out by itself on a rascal. And, you know, because Ziggler sells things so well, he could totally sell the shock of seeing the Raw's general manager and eliminate himself.
That reminds me of some reason. Did you see Barrett's little rising podium?
Oh god, no! I tend to like change the channel when Barrett comes on now.
Like the thing that Paul, like the scissor lift or whatever, they had Paul Heyman come out to get on top of the cell.
Oh,
they basically draped it with like a black fabric, and then Barrett kind of rolled out next to the Titantron and just kind of lifted as he did his Bad News Barrett thing. And I'm going, how long could they make this go if like he went all the way up to the ceiling? Because his music's just playing and they're just kind of showing him slowly going up. And I'm like, how long could they make this last? I'm like, make it last like 5 minutes where he's just slowly going up. I don't know.
Okay, how many Undertaker entrances can you have happen while Barrett's being lifted? I think it's the better question. Well, I mean, that raises a good question to end the show on 978-276-9418 at MO Commentary. By the end of 2014, I'll give you a list. Zack Ryder, Wade Barrett, Dolph Ziggler,
Yoshitatsu,
CM Punk. Who is the most likely to leave the company? I won't. I'm gonna throw the curveball. The curveball is they will not be future endeavored. They will go on to find bigger and better things, like John Morrison.
Do we want to get cynical and do a death pool for 2014?
Oh God, a death pool. I'm still reeling from Mr. Banks.
Oh. Will's father.
His
uncle. Sorry.
Phil Banks, you dick. Uncle Phil.
Uncle Phil. Or Uncle Phil.
Or Shredder, if you will. Shredder.
Shredder?
Turtles. I can't even do the voice. Oh my god, who did I say sounded like him too? Oh man, this is how long I have been on Twitter, because there was definitely someone on Raw and I'm like, holy crap, he sounds like Phil Banks doing Shredder. Oh god, who would you put? Well, I think you're gonna go Mae Young.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
You're the one that brought up the death pool.
I know, but that's a natural death. I mean, like a shithead that deserves it.
Now Jason's playing God. I don't know if I want any part of this.
I don't know, I'm trying to think of like who's a piece of shit in wrestling that's kind of like, oh, I'm fucking coked out.
I feel like those days are over for everybody.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I feel like TNA is taking that responsibility now.
Yeah, TNA goes on the death pool.
All of TNA. It's not even a TNA superstar. All of TNA.
Yep.
I mean, if I want to be super cynical, I will probably always throw Kurt Angle into my death pool. Kurt Angle is essentially the Scott Weiland of pro wrestling. He'll always be in jail, and he'll always say something ridiculous, but he never quite dies.
And his Twitter will always remain hacked.
Oh my god.
I didn't mean it. I mean, I got hacked and nothing. I didn't even bring up the death pool. Somebody hacked our podcast, and it wasn't me.
It was Kurt Angle this time. Kurt Angle was trying to be controversial and threw his own name into our death pool. He was trying to get those TNA buy rates back up.
That ain't happening.
Yeah, my TNA death pool so far. Whoops, Freudian slip. In my wrestling death pool so far, I have Mae Young and TNA, unfortunately.
I'm with you.
I'm hoping to add main event to that death pool.
Is it still on?
Yep.
Oh. I don't know. I somehow survived knowing the product without watching NXT or main event. I'm sorry, I'm a terrible fan.
I know, if I could get SmackDown into that death pool, I would be such a happy person. So much happier.
Well, actually, there's the notion lately that I've heard that SmackDown's going to go live once the TV license is renewed.
If it goes live and it goes to Tuesday night, I mean, you do have the potential of burn your fans out by having wrestling on Monday and then Tuesday nights. I mean, the second best option is bring it back to Thursday nights, and then you have wrestling Monday night, and then you have Tuesday, Wednesday off, do your Thursday night, and then you have your pay-per-view Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this as someone who's a fan of the Attitude Era, but it seemed to work in that era of wrestling.
I don't know. Saturday night would be cool.
It's still a television graveyard, though.
Yeah.
It's not quite as bad as Friday. I even said the occasional Saturday night, whatever, is cool. But it's still, I mean, the other option is, you know, they would never do this, and there's no need for a Sunday Night Heat now that you have the pre-show. But the other, you know, option as an older fan is to say, you know, put SmackDown on Sunday nights. And then, you know, you can do a Sunday night show where, I mean, you're essentially giving away matches for free anyway. Why not tie everything into television just to get the ratings up? Because, you know, unless they decide to air non-WWE related commercials on the YouTube channel during the you know, the pre-match, there's no reason to keep doing it.
I think it's just to get formatting down, so when the inevitable WWE app takes over, that they go, look, this is how we do it.
I mean, that's definitely a viable option. I just think at this point, unless there's advertising, but again, I'm trying to think as a pragmatic business person. I mean, if you're going to monetize on it, if you're going to try to get advertising dollars, fine, I get that. But I mean, even to push an app, a free app, much less. I mean, unless they're planning on, you know, kind of utilizing, well, hey, if, you know, we're on their phone, let's just pump all of our advertising into the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, any questions, comments regarding tonight's show, or predictions, or if any more of Andy Kaufman's alter egos, relatives, or, you know, anyone, Andy Kaufman related would like to call the show, 978-2769-4118 at MO Commentary. I think that about wraps it up.
Yeah, I think we're good. We did a whole hour, so we're back.
Yeah, Jason spent after the hour.
I'm spent. We'll see you in 4 weeks.
We'll see you guys later. I'm Eddie Brophy.
I'm Jason Smith.
See you then.
Good night.